Welcome to the Firehouse Roundtable podcast, brought to you by the Ventura Fire Foundation. My name's Peter McKenzie. I'm one of the hosts. I'm a retired fire captain with the City of Ventura Fire Department.
And I'm Jason Kay. I'm an active fire captain also with the Ventura Fire Department.
And we are excited that you are going to spend some time with us at the kitchen table, learning about firehouse issues that we're trying to bring awareness to.
Thanks for joining us as we discuss the issues of being a firefighter, both on and off duty, and how it affects us.
Let's get right to it. All right, we'd like to welcome Audra and Chelsi from the Dear Chiefs podcast to the show. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hola. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're looking forward to this conversation. But before we get started, for the sake of our listeners who don't know who you are, maybe a quick 1 or 2 minute bio on each of you, and then we'll get right into it.
Well, it's funny because when we were filling out this bio, I'm going to throw Chelsi under the bus here. The guys told me that I filled out a form for both of us, but Chelsi filled out the form just for Chelsi.
That's what I thought I was supposed to do, okay?
I didn't realize it was like a me and Chelsi thing. I just always include us all together in the Dear Chiefs thing. So we're a Dear Chiefs podcast. I'm Audra. I'm the crazy half. Actually, I think we're equally crazy at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. We started our podcast during the pandemic in 2020, and it's just been a hot mess ever since. I don't know. What do you think, Chelsi?
I think, yeah, we're a hot mess express, but we do bring some things to the table. We're both work from home mothers. We've been married to our firefighters collectively for 21 years. You know, that's basically it. We've been going through it for almost, half of our lives now?
Feels like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'd say I'm excited about your guys' perspective because obviously the title of your or the push for your podcast is more towards the spouses, and that's an area we're interested in as well. But obviously we are the opposite spouses as you guys, which I think will be an interesting kind of back and forth when we get into it. But before we get too far, talk to me about the title of your podcast, because when I see the title, I have something in my head, but I don't know if that's what you have in your head. So how did you arrive at the title of your podcast and what's behind that?
It's a pretty good story, Chels. Chels tells it very good.
When I was looking, we wanted to do a play on words. So I was looking for something that has been said in firehouses throughout the world over and over and over again. And so I went into a forum for firefighters, and I can't even remember now what it was. And there was this discussion going on about like the riffraff that happens in the firehouse, right? Like, and then the chief comes in the next day and somebody has to tell the chief about it. But the person that was going to tell the chief about it is the captain, and he's like gone. So he writes the chief a letter, and it says, "Dear Chief, much has happened since we last spoke." And I saw that and I just went, that's it. Because much has happened in our house since our firefighter has been gone, right? So that was it. That's how we got Dear Chiefs. And then it kind of evolved because now we're really talking to chiefs about mental health of their people at work and the families at home. So
that's not what I expected. So in my mind, when I heard the title of your podcast, it was a wife teeing off on the chief on why basically the fire department is screwing their family.
Well, because we do that as well. Yeah.
Don't get us wrong. Like, we're totally about that.
Yeah. Because I've seen, there's been a handful of wives at our department, and Jason and I worked for the same department for a long time. I no longer do. Jason still does. Who have done a Dear Chief letter to the chief, and they've kind of lived in infamy on some of the content of those letters. So that's where I thought the name was coming from, which I thought was pretty bold, which I support completely.
Yes, but, it supports both ends of the spectrum. So it supports our house and our family, and then it also supports maybe how we would like to say things to their chief, given the opportunity.
And has that message ever? I'm assuming there's been a chief or two that's listened to the podcast, or maybe you've had one on, or what is that? Has that ever happened?
To be honest, we have not had a fire chief on yet. It's been discussed. We have yet to have one that would dare to be on, I think, to be honest with you.
One that's brave enough?
Yeah. But we've definitely had conversations about former chiefs, things we've said to chiefs, things we've heard people say to chiefs.
Yeah. Well, let's get right into it. So I'm excited about the conversation because obviously Jason and I have a podcast, and our point of view is from us, and your guys' podcast is from you guys, and you guys are the spouses, and we were or are the firefighters. And those, just in listening to some of your podcasts, you're telling the story of the other side of the coin, and Jason and I are telling the opposite story, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times those things cross over, and the similar things we're trying to bring awareness to. Let's talk about what's going on at Chelsi's house. So she's got kids running around. It's summertime. No one's in school. It's chaos, which is a big part of the world that we live in, right? I can't wait for our kids to go back to school. But
next week,
if you hear the noise in the background, that's what that is. Yeah,
we got a countdown going all the way around here. I can tell for kids to get back into school.
I can't wait.
So why don't you guys talk about where your podcast came from? Now that we have the title, what led you to start doing it, and then kind of what got it to blow up and get to the point where it is today with almost 13,000 followers and on Instagram and all that kind of stuff.
Funny story. We've told this a few times, but we'll tell it one more time. We actually met on Instagram. So when we started the podcast, we hadn't met in person. In fact, we didn't meet in person for a couple of years later because the pandemic happened and nobody was leaving their house. We met on Instagram because Chelsi and I were supposed to be guests at a firewife, I guess you can call it, convention down in Huntington Beach that ended up being canceled. And we kind of had both been, I don't want to call it blogging, but maybe Chelsi has been blogging for a long time about her life as a firewife. And I had been on Instagram, Insta blogging, I don't know what you call it. And so we met and we started talking kind of through DMs and decided that we wanted to do something together. And the podcast came to fruition. So we really had no clue what we were doing. We just kind of said, yeah, Chelsi was like, let's start a podcast. I'm like, cool, let's do it. Let's start it tomorrow. And that was it. And then we just released season 4, our first episode of season 4, and we are actively recording like crazy. And over the past, I would say, year or so, maybe 2 years, we have definitely hit I don't want to say hit a nerve, but we have kind of hit a gold mine because this stuff Chelsi and I knew had not been talked about for a long time is now being talked about a lot. And I think you guys see that too with more mental health podcasts and just, firefighters coming on and talking more about what's going on at their home and what's going on at work and how it affects them and their families and their marriages. And I think, a lot of it was luck and a lot of it is perseverance, because even when 20 people were listening to our podcast, we were still recording and still releasing new content and really just pushing for it because we knew there is a huge need for fire families to feel like they aren't alone and that they are understood and the stuff that they feel is normal.
Yeah, I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. There's a couple things you hit on that I want to touch on. First of all, life of a firewife. Is that so? Where I come from in the expression in the firehouse that I'm in, it's usually something like hashtag life of a firewife, and then there's some poor long-haired blonde woman with a giant ring on her finger that just happens to be fanning herself with her hand or something like that. And it's usually meant in sarcasm and in kind of a fun way. Is that the same thing that you guys have up north where you guys are?
I mean, that's not true for us.
Not at all.
No, it's definitely not true, which is why it's the sarcasm funny. And the play on words and the funny part. It's completely a misnomer. And my wife is the first one to stick her hand up and go, yeah, I think she needs a backhand. Let's get realistic here and talk about what's going on.
It's funny because so one of the recent reels that we posted was me in a pool, and it was complete satire. And that was probably... Well, actually, no, that wasn't the first time we got some nasty comments, but there were so many trolls just saying the most dumb, asinine comments like, oh, your $150,000 pool, like, oh, blah, 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 just whine. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So my first thought was, oh my God, I'm not doing reels anymore. I hate jerks on the internet. And then I was like, you know what? Actually, I really don't care because I know. Like my husband works his ass off. I work my ass off. Sorry, we can't say. Sorry, my butt off. And I don't really care what people think. So the idea that, I'm this stay-at-home mom who has these giant rings and wears the big hats. And although we do love our big hats, Chelsea.
This is true.
And,
we do love our big hats. Give me a derby hat any day of the week and twice on Sunday. I am happy.
Totally. But it's the idea of that, fire wife is just so convoluted, and it makes us laugh because we're like, yeah, no, that's not real life at all.
It's disgusting to me. I'm like, I wish that was my life.
Right.
Right.
If any of that was true, I would probably be so much better off.
Yeah, and I prefer your first example of saying the Hot Mess Express. That's perfect.
Yeah. We've had a saying on this podcast many a times is firemen are fun to date and they're horrible to be married to because you're basically on your own and just an island doing your own thing. But that you do bring up a good point because there's a lot of, and you guys are both in California, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So the California Fire Service is unique, but there's, especially in our political environment, we get a lot of hate sometimes politically for pensions and all the stuff that nobody wants, that I don't really want to talk about. But then you have people like us over here saying there's issues, that this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is not my belief. I'll just say that right off the bat. But the people that do throw the hate are like the people that you said, oh, you're $100,000 this and you're that, are the same. And then that's not received well when we then raise our hands and go, wait, it's really hard over here. We have mental health issues. We have spouse issues. We have kids. It's an interesting conversation. Not a popular conversation by any means, but I think that's maybe going to get worse as we bring more awareness to the downside, the dark side of the fire service and what it does to the firemen and the families. But
I think it's going to get worse.
I don't think it's going to get worse. I think it's
deserved.
For me personally, my husband works for CAL FIRE, so I'm going to go right ahead and say that. When the Cal Matters report came out about the severity of the length of time that they're on fires, the mental health status of the firefighters and their families, when that report came out, I could not walk downtown and not have somebody apologize to me.
Wow.
So I got emails from people that I hadn't heard from in years, and they're just like, hey, I totally didn't know, and I'm so sorry for you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you don't have to be sorry. It's my husband's job, but also this is a real issue and it needs addressing, not only by California HR, but also in general for all firefighters and their families. And so I don't think it's going to get worse. I think it's going to get better.
I hope you're right. And I'll just share some personal experience from Jason and I's podcast. We've gotten negative feedback about, you know what, you guys are well paid. You're from people in our circles, fire service people. You shouldn't be airing the dirty laundry about the sleep issues and the this issues. And to that, I put the middle finger up, but I'm just saying it's out there. And I don't even think it's a risk. I don't think any of this warrants not doing what we're doing. I think what we're doing is much better and needed and all that. But it is an interesting nuance to the conversation.
It's so interesting, though. Because we've got nothing but support. When we started this, I was terrified. Remember, Audra? Because I was like, dude, I can't do that. My husband's going to get fired. But the support that we've gotten from CAL FIRE Wellness, from the Benevolent Fund, from the union. I mean, the union's like our biggest fan. So for me, we haven't had that experience.
No.
I'm also really careful about what I say too. And prefacing it with, this is my opinion.
Yeah.
But
I think I think, Peter, you make an interesting point, because for me personally, I completely separate how much money you make versus mental health, because they don't have anything to do with each other at all. You could make as much money as there is in the world and still have mental health problems. So for me, we see billionaires jumping off buildings all the time. So to me, they don't have anything to do with each other. For people to say that you can't complain because you make this much money, no, that's complete. I'm going to say a bad word, because that's just not the case. Anybody can have a mental health issue. Anybody can struggle at home. Anybody can, have substance abuse problems. It doesn't matter how much money you make. That has nothing to do with it. So anybody saying that you shouldn't be talking or airing out your dirty laundry because you make this much money, no, sit down stop.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it's bullshit for sure. But I guess what I'm saying is, and for the record, we get tons of supportive feedback, and we have people who really like what we're doing. And what I'm talking about is a very small minority. It's just interesting to add, a layer to the conversation.
Well, and it's interesting because in the fire service too, especially, you guys still, and I shouldn't say guys, the service in general still has this stigma of not wanting to talk about mental health, right? And some of them still don't believe that mental health is an issue. And I mean, I see it all the time. I hear it all the time from people who work in departments. They're like, oh, just shove it down. You're fine. Move on.
Yeah. I think that issue is going to fix itself through time, because I think that's a very antiquated mentality. And I think a lot of the younger people coming up who are taking in leadership positions feel differently, or they're just have different inputs in their life, that I think that's going to phase out, but we're stuck with it for a little while for sure. I would agree.
So
I think
we were just having this. I have thoughts. I'm a jaded 15-year veteran of this crap. So let me tell you, I disagree, because until we get away from the 1940s model of wifey's at home, barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, and doing all the things, and firefighters at work, right? Until we get away from 1940s mentality, it's not going to fix itself, because we're still operating as if there's a spouse at home taking care of the kids in the house that's not working. And I deal with this every single day of my life. So I'm telling you it's true. And I think Audra on some levels does too. My husband agrees with me on this, and he would come on this podcast and say it like 100%. Until we get away from that 1940s model, nothing's going to change.
So let me clarify. When I say this is going to fix itself, I'm talking about different generations have different viewpoints. For example, like the millennial generation looks at mental health differently. Absolutely. They look at work-life balance differently. And when I say that, that's what I'm referencing. When the millennials are leading the fire service, it's going to be different. It's not going to be perfect. I'm not saying it's going to change everything, but they have a different viewpoint on some of those key issues that the people leading the fire service today don't have. In fact, I mean, there's a whole nother can of worms, like the millennial generation versus the generation that's older that Jason and I came from. There's a huge struggle going on there.
I don't know if I'm okay with you dragging me into this conversation. I'm having popcorn over here, watching Peter and Chelsi go at it. Like, this is getting good.
Look. My money is on Gen Z, personally, because here's the deal. Gen Z, and I'm watching my Gen Zers right now, and I'm sure Audra's seeing this too. He wants to know how to drive a tractor. He wants to know how to plant a garden. He wants to know how to feed a horse. They're the doers, and they also understand their rights, and they want what's good for their mental health. I think when Gen Z comes up, that's when the real shift's going to happen. I do not have any trust in millennials. I'm sorry.
Give me the Gen Z ages to see if I agree with that. What are Gen Z ages?
So they're 13 on up at this point. There's no cap on Gen Z. I don't think.
So when does Gen X and Gen Z kind of
Gen X and then millennial and then Gen Z, right? That's how it goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Gen X is older. So
I'm right on the cusp of Gen X and millennial.
So Audra and I are Xennials.
Yeah.
So we had the corded phone, and we also had the internet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a Gen Xer, and I think what Peter's saying, I agree with all of you, and I think you're kind of all saying the same thing from an outside sort of perspective, which is the people who are in charge right now were brought up with that 1940s mentality, right? And I totally agree. And they're trying, but they're having a really hard time getting their hands around and their brain around the fact that this might be real, and it's not an excuse guys are using to go off work, right? Yes. This next generation that's coming up, they better fall in line, or else guys are going to look at them and go, I don't want that job. And we're starting to see numbers, I won't even say decline, but almost collapse with how many people are applying for the job because of the millennials coming up going, I don't know that I want to drive a tractor and work for a living and be super blue collar and work hard. But I also think that it's time to get on board, which is kind of, I think, what Peter's alluding to by it'll fix itself. Because if you don't, the fire service is just going to be in despair, because these problems are real. They are happening. the departments are seeing this huge shift in people raising their hand and going, I don't want to be here 30 years anymore. I can't do it anymore. And how do I leave at 20, like a lot of police officers can figure out how to do? Because when you get the job, when I got the job 22, 23 years ago, nobody talked about it. It was just not only something that you kind of shoved down and dealt with yourself, but it's part of the risk of the job and almost worn it as a badge of pride.
Yeah.
So I'm actually stoked in the direction in general that the fire department is heading.
Oh,
and I'm so glad to bring awareness to all of this stuff with, Dr. O's that we had on and Tiffany Atala and all the mental health experts, Dr. Sharma.
Yeah. So I'm stoked to see where it's going, but we've got a long way to go. I mean, that's kind of the point I was trying to make. Like, we're not there. And we have a very long way to go. And as you guys know, in the fire service and state service and all of those things take forever.
It's the government. It's the government.
It's
terrible. Yeah. And when I also want to say one other thing, because when I say it's going to fix itself, that doesn't mean we have no obligation to do anything and it's just going to fix itself. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, we're going to get rid of that old mentality just through attrition. You can't be a fireman and be 80 years old, right? It's just not possible.
This is my favorite episode to watch Peter dig himself out of these holes.
I know a guy that's in his late 70s that has no...
he's leaving. I guarantee
no plans
he's leaving.
To retire. I mean, he'll leave one way or the other, but he's not planning on retiring anytime soon.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So I want to talk about something. So Jason and I have our perspective just from being in the firehouse, and you guys have your perspective from where you see things. What do you, if you could smack firemen up the face and like wake them up on like, what are the top like 2 or 3 issues that if you could wave your magic wand and fix or bring awareness to, or whatever we want to say it, what would it be?
Stop calling in sick when you're
overtime. Yeah. Well, yeah, that, stop calling in sick when you're not. Stop telling your wife that you got mandoed when you actually took the overtime on purpose.
Okay, that's 2.
Prioritize your family over your job because your job is not going to hold you when you're dying.
Okay, good. I got 3 from you. Audra, how are your top 3? This is fascinating to me, and it's not what I expected, and I'll share once we hear Audra's.
I mean, mine, I think, is when you're ready to retire, please do. Don't, I mean, I could go off on this, but I'll try not to. Just don't stick around because you're trying to max out your pension. Just get out of there. Please, God. And then I kind of mirror the same thing as Chelsi is like, prioritize your family and don't take the union job because it's awful.
Okay. All right. So let me add some context to this conversation. We've had probably not as many experts as you guys have had because you've got 100 and some episodes and we're like 20, I think. But the ones that really get it, like the culturally competent therapists who understand the fire service and who also have background in some sort of practitioner position, we point blank ask them, you can fix the fire department. You have absolute authority to do one thing to fix it. What would it be? And do you know what the number one answer is? I'll ask you guys first, or Audra and Chelsi. What's if you had to guess what that is from a psychologist or a family therapist?
Mandatory debriefing.
Okay,
that would
Chelsi?
be one of our guesses. Yep.
Chelsi.
I don't know, man. Less overtime. Prioritize your family.
Okay, so it's not prioritize your family. It is don't work so much.
Oh.
So it all goes back to this mandatory overtime, sick calls that are getting guys mandated. It all goes back to that. And here you guys are spouses. And I'm like, what is your number one thing, Chelsi? No sick calls so he doesn't get mandated. And don't lie to me when you volunteer to be mandated and you actually were. And the third thing was support the family. Yeah. Which was just fascinating to me. But the reality is if you weren't getting mandated and your husband was home, that he'd be a more supportive person because he'd be at home more.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think you have to understand, like my husband works for an agency that doesn't have an end in overtime.
And I think
there is no cap on the amount of days that they can hold my husband on duty.
But I think it's the same in Southern California, right? Oh, I feel like it's the same. Most departments who are struggling on the mandos have the same thing, right? There's no max hold.
But do you guys have a max hold though, right?
We
Oh,
do.
you do.
Yeah.
Well,
But
So-
it's not good.
Peter's not allowed to talk about this because he's retired.
Yeah, go for it,
so
Jason.
I'll talk
Go
about
for
it.
it.
Jason, what's your
And I
answer?
think so. In theory, right? It's a 120, so it's 5 days. In reality, there's a stipulation at the bottom of every one of our operational guidelines that says the chief can do what he needs to do to run the department. And also in reality, when we go out of town for brush fires, which is I think 12 months out of the year now, we can go for up to 21 days at a time. It is not CAL FIRE numbers.
Right.
I will not say that it is as hard to be a city firefighter as it is to be a CAL FIRE firefighter because of the amount of days that they get mandoed and they work in a row, because I know that that's more than me. So go ahead.
I think we need to clarify that. So you get your 21 days, right? Then do you get to go home?
Well, we might have to go to a station. We may have to go back to a station, but we do have rules in place to where you need X amount of hours of rest when you get back. And then they're absolutely not going to hold you at the station for more than your regular shift when you get back. So if you do get back at most, it'll be 1 or 2 days more, and then you'll have a few days off.
So that's the difference. When the CAL FIRE guys get back to their station after their 21 days, there's no end to the hold.
Oh, they're not mandated to go home for like ours. You have mandatory 24 hours.
They are not They can put them in a hotel for 48 hours.
Oh.
Or they can rest, right?
That's rest. That's their 48 hours of rest, but they do not have to send them home.
Yeah. And I support that CAL FIRE contract and what they're doing to their guys with the amount of change that they're trying to make. I support CAL FIRE wholeheartedly. In fact, one of our battalion chiefs' wives is the mental health battalion chief for CAL FIRE. And I don't know if it's just Southern California or all of California, but
is she like the top person in ESS?
Those are terms that I would not
know. No, because she's battalion chief. So she works under whoever is in charge at
I'm telling you,
state
Chelsea,
level.
CAL FIRE is the only one that does ASS. We don't have ASS.
Well,
they have to.
For?
It's employee support support system.
Yeah, so we do have things like peer support, and we do have things like counselors and therapists that are available, which is pretty awesome, but it's definitely not something as big as what CAL FIRE has, which is probably some kind of law mandated by somebody because it's a state thing where they actually have paid positions in uniforms that is part of the support like that.
I'll just circle this back around. The point of this little impromptu poll is that pretty much everybody's on the same page. Like, these people work too much. It's screwing the families. They work too much. They're getting PTSD. They're bringing it home. They're screwing. It's the problem. It's not that the husband is suffering from PTSD and he's, those are the issues, but he's home all the time. Like, that's not the issue. It is an issue. Right. I don't want to minimize that. But the issue is that they're not there. And when Jason and I got hired, we weren't working those kind of crazy hours. It was hard to get overtime. People wanted overtime. Now in this department, ours anyway, nobody wants the overtime. They want nothing to do with the overtime, but it's not possible. So just an interesting layer to the conversation that when I ask those questions, I would expect it to be like more self-awareness, more one-on-one time with your spouse, more whatever those things are. And nobody ever answers the question that way. It's like, just let him come home or her home.
And it goes back to what you were talking about earlier too.
Work less and get some quality sleep.
When you think about it, I mean, it really is all encompassing, right? So like you were talking about, people think California firefighters are paid too much. Well, you're paid too much, number one, because you're mandoed 21 days in a row, right? So if you take the mandos away, you're not getting paid enough, most likely, to be able to afford to live in California, right? So it all comes together in this just bubble of just crazy crap that you're just peeling back layers constantly, trying to figure out how to make your life work and, have a career where you can only work for 25 years and get out. I mean, nobody wants I'm sorry, I love firefighters, but nobody wants a 60-year-old man or woman running into a burning building saving me. Like, I'm going to look for, no offense to the 60-year-olds. I love you all. You should be chief. Okay. But it's like, that's not like, I don't know. It's just, my husband got hired when he was 31. So by the time he's done with his career, he'll be 57. He's like, my knees can't take that. Like, I'm not running up the stairs. I don't want to do that, So it just won't.
I want to explore what you said, Audra, but first, before we do that, I want to flip this around, and what are the 2 or 3 things you could change about a new firewife? And I'm curious if this is the same advice Jason and I would give.
Change. Well, change is a bad word. We don't say change. If we could tell them what to expect, and we call it what to expect when you marry a firefighter. It's like what to expect when you're expecting. I mean, I don't think anybody can be mentally prepared for how much you're going to be by yourself. And so it takes a really independent person to be married to a first responder, because you have to be okay with being alone a lot. That's what I would say. What would you say, Chelsea?
I would echo that. We always say to be compassionately curious. If you have questions about what goes on at work, ask them. Always be talking to each other. Find ways to connect both when they're at work and when they're at home, and prioritize the relationship over everything. I mean, that's really all you can hope. And be patient. I think in our early days, Audra and I were probably not very patient at all with our spouses, especially when we had toddlers running around. It's really hard. Don't hit them when they come in the door with all the problems of the house and all the things. Give them time to decompress and integrate into the home and find their footing before you're like, here, take the kids. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
You need a break too, but man, they've just been at it for 48, 72 hours with no rest. So.
Gotcha. That's from my perspective, it's basically the same thing. You have to figure out how to do this on your own, which is terrible to say. It's like, hey, we just got married. I'm out of here. You're on your own. Figure it out. Like, that's horrible, right?
It's very similar. I'd say independency and resiliency is huge for the wife of a firefighter. And then the other thing is you gotta, just like firefighters search out the experienced guys or the old timers at the firehouse, I'd say wives need to talk to some experienced firefighter wives, because we don't want to talk to the people who are in the 5-year game and then get divorced, because divorce rates are high in the fire service, right?
That's a sore subject, Jason. It's actually not true.
Everywhere, but also in the fire service.
It's the same.
They're equal.
It's the same.
They're equal.
Yeah, there's no real proof that
get your shovel out, Jason.
Yeah, now Jason's taking himself
that has been researched.
I'm okay being wrong. Keep going.
Yeah,
it has been researched. We will admit the last research was done in 2017
that we could find. Yeah.
That we could find.
Okay, so in 2016, they were way more in the fire service. No, I'm just kidding with you. So I'd love to see the difference, because I feel like when they talk about police officers and firefighters have a high divorce rate, higher than everybody else. I'll bet you those numbers are from the 90s or the 80s, when all the divorce rates were insanely high, right?
Yeah.
I've asked people that actually say that are actual therapists or lawyers or whatever to show me the data, and they cannot show me the data.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
So that is a lie that is being fed to you as a firefighter to scare you.
I mean, the divorce rate in our country is 50%, right? So,
and firefighters are 50% or lower.
Yeah, it's actually lower. I think it was 40.
50% is terrible.
Oh my God. In Spain, it's 90%, but I digress.
Wow. Talk to the experienced firefighter wives and say, what would make your relationship better? Because I do think there's some struggles that firefighter relationships go through that others are. I mean, I'll even generalize and say most people. It's just different. It's a very different relationship, being away and being apart from each other as much as we are. And I think the expectation when you get married, I don't think anybody has that expectation of being apart from each other 2/3 of the time, and having a solo bed, half the time plus. Yeah. So I think that experience would be huge for the firefighters who are about to get married.
Hey, I love my solo bed. Thank you very much.
But that was really one of the reasons why we started the podcast too. I mean, there's not a lot out there when it comes to the perspective of the fire wife or the fire spouse, but I mean, in all honesty, we couldn't have done this even 10 years ago. We didn't have enough experience. You know, you can't have and no offense to the spouses out there who are newly married, but you just don't know enough to be educated on the matter. I mean, you can think you do, but I think the first 10 years of the service is just so crazy. I mean, especially if you're brand new married, you're starting a family, you know, your spouse is out there starting this career. It's just like, it's complete chaos. You're still learning about yourselves. You're still learning about how to, you know, be married. And then you throw some kids into the mix and your firefighter is gone for, you know, 2/3 of the life every year. It's so chaotic. And there's no way I would have had enough information to even talk about this 10 years ago.
My wife would talk a lot about how, when is it going to slow down? Because you go to paramedic school, then you go to the fire academy, and then you're on probation. And she goes, "You're testing for engineer. She now understands it's not going to. It just keeps going, right? Until you decide to slow your career down, whenever that is, that you're going to start talking about and trending towards retirement." And I like to see a lot of these guys start slowing down a little bit as they get towards those years. And some of these guys don't. They have their foot on the gas pedal until the day they're like, "Oh, I guess it's over."
That'll be my husband. Oh my God.
I want to add a layer to this conversation because I've struggled with this my whole career, and I honestly think that we have it wrong. If you're going to be a good fireman, quote unquote, new fireman, probation, first 5 years, whatever you want to call it, you have to do certain things. You have to volunteer for the mandates. You have to be the one that does all the stuff that nobody else wants to do, which in my mind, right, and I didn't always have this wasn't always a popular opinion, if you make that choice to be a good fireman and it screws your family, how does that reconcile? Because sometimes, you know, you might have a vacation with your family, or your wife might be going somewhere, something important in her life, and you're going to jump on the sword because you're trying to do what you're supposed to do to be the good rookie and the good first couple year fireman. Yet you're by doing that, you're actively choosing to, I don't want to say sacrifice, but screw your family over. And is that right or wrong? Because in my mind, like, what's number one? I don't think it's the fire department.
I got this,
Audra. I think it's your family, right? And that in the fire service, in the fire station, that is not a popular opinion. Go ahead, Chelsi.
I think it's both. I think that you can find a balance between being a good firefighter and being a good husband or wife. I think it's a conversation that needs to happen with your spouse. How much is too much overtime? How much is too much sacrifice? And I don't think you really find that out until you're in it. And I think that first 5 years is really when you, like, it's a make it or break it time. Like Audra was saying, you don't know until you know. And I would add that even as 15, 20-year veterans here, we don't have it all figured out. We're still hitting our head on brick walls all the time. And so I think it's both. I think you have to decide as a human if you're going to be a good spouse. And that might not be a popular opinion, but that's the truth.
Well, you're making a choice one way or the other. You're either choosing the fire service or you're choosing your family. And it's not black and white. And I get that there's more to that.
It's intentional. But intentionality is important.
Add kids to the mix. And now, like, for me, that's when it got even harder for me, because now I have little babies at home. I feel like I'm screwing them.
Yeah, I think it's an understanding that your family is sacrificing for you while you're sacrificing for the public. And I think that going into a relationship with someone, they need to know that they're going to make the sacrifice. And will they know what the sacrifices are? Absolutely not. Can they prepare for the sacrifices that are coming? No, absolutely not. But they need to know this is going to be a sacrifice. And instilling that in your kids, like, dad's out there working hard for the public and protecting people and property. And we have to be here sacrificing for dad or mom.
Yeah. But I guess the point I would make back to you is, granted, for sure, don't disagree with what you're saying, but, like, what percentage of your family are you willing to give up? Like,
well, so
I think that's a personal choice. Yeah. I think that, again, that's a personal,
Yeah. Here's where I think millennials have it kind of on the extreme opposite spectrum, I think. And tell me if you agree with this, Jason and Peter, 'cause I'm curious. Millennials who are hired now I don't want to say don't care because that's so negative. They have priorities and it's not the fire service, right? Their priority is their family, their home, the stuff they want to do. So they do, this is going to sound so negative, but I'm sorry, millennials, they do the bare minimum because they are not invested like the Gen Xers, right? That's my perspective. They will push the envelope as far as they can because they have prioritized themselves over the job. And I'm really sorry. That sounds so bad, but
I don't think that's selfish though. I think that's actually smart. And I think that,
but it's extreme. They're very extreme, right?
I would agree with Chelsi. They're a byproduct of the Gen Xers sacrificing too much of their families. So they're going the pendulum is swinging.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why my money's on what did I say? Gen Z.
But Chelsi, that's probably also why you said people shouldn't be calling in sick, screwing their other people in the station. It's the millennials because they're like going, no, my family, me is more important.
But what's really interesting,
I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying it's a balancing act that we're seeing.
Definitely.
But what's really interesting about what you just said is I did say don't call in sick and screw your partner. But on the same token,
but that's screwing the family. That's really screwing the family.
Right. So, but also, if you're having stress and you need to take care of yourself, please go do that. Like, I'm at a loss. Like,
so there's a lot of departments right now that since PTSD became presumptive, there's a lot of departments that are struggling, as is our smaller department, with guys raising their hand and saying, I have this issue. And they deserve to be off and figure out what's going on and get themselves back into the right place because of that sacrifice they made for their citizens, right? For their job. And then the other side of the coin is people who then either abuse that or the guys at the firehouse who are left holding the bag saying, okay, how bad is this for you, man? Because I'm left picking all this stuff up. And are you just doing this to get some time off? And that's where this whole struggle comes in between, do you call in sick? How sick are you? Because it's, I can't think of the term where somebody has to cover the shift. It's not like almost any other career when somebody calls in sick, everybody else can pick up the slack. Somebody has to be there and get the mando, right? Which is the bottom line of what we're talking about.
I'm going to tell a personal story that's actually like immediately right now. So my husband is on a stress leave right now and he needs to be on it. We went to go get some of his things from the firehouse over the weekend. And we had the guy come up and be like, how serious is this? Because you don't look sick. And I'm sorry, but if you're the guy asking that question, that's totally not okay. Because you have no idea what people are actually going through. Like none at all. They could look perfectly put together, have it all together at the firehouse and be falling apart at home. And in my personal experience, that's not a good place to be. So when I say like, if you're having the stress, go take care of yourself. I literally had to tell my husband, like, you're either going to take a stress leave and take care of this stuff, or I'm going to have to think about not being here because I can't. This is crazy. And that's unfortunate that we had to get to that place 15 years into it, but that's where we are. So I think don't be that guy. Like,
I appreciate you sharing that because it adds nuance to the conversation. I think there's a difference in people, and this goes down to personal, what you're comfortable doing or not doing. I don't want to say argue, but the counterpoint is there's probably a lot of guys in the station that should be raising their hand and saying, I need stress, but we're exasperating it. I don't want to assume that anybody would fake this, right? Because that's not the type of people we are. But if somebody did do that, that would just be making it that much harder on everybody else. And arguably there's people in the station who should be going on stress leaves, but they aren't. So if everybody did it, which I would like to say would be a great idea, the fire department would fall apart. Like it would cease to exist, right? It would be a big problem. But this issue is so complex and so connected, and so many people are affected by all of this. It's just, I don't know. There is no like easy solution or guys, this is, if we just did 1, 2, 3, everything would be great. We would have already done it by now if that was the case.
Right. I think that Audra made a really valid point when she said mandatory debriefings. I think it's not a mandatory debriefing because you can't force anybody to talk about their feelings or the call that they just went on or what they're thinking. But what I do think is that when you sit in a room with your peers and you hear a story that somebody tells and they are open, honest, and communicative, it changes the way you think about what just happened to you. And if we just held mandatory debriefings after tough calls, or at least peer support meetings or something, things would start to get a little bit better. And people that really needed help might feel that it's okay to ask for it. And it's the people that say, you don't look that sick, or you seem fine. What are you doing to me? Because I want to be off tomorrow. That's the cog in the wheel, right?
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I totally agree with what you've been saying. Peter's heard me say this before, but as a captain of my station, I use this excuse when we go on a really bad call or when I could use the peer support team's help. I tell my guys, this is happening because we need to flex that muscle for the peer support team. It's for those guys. It's not for us. It's for the peer support team to come have some practice.
That's smart.
And then nobody has to talk, right? You get fed or whatever. You get to not run calls for an hour or two. Everybody sits around. Nobody has to talk. And you know what happens? Every single person ends up sharing. And I get so upset with the other captains who go, my crew said they were good, so we're not going to talk. My crew said they were good, so we're not going to have peer support come over. And I'm trying to get rid of some of that culture as well. So find an excuse.
Right. So one of the things that my husband does if they're out on a brush fire or whatever for a long time is he's like, all right, we're going to go out and we're going to like take our shoes off. And the guys are like, what? We're going to take our boots off. What are you talking about? We're going to find a creek and we're going to put our feet in the creek and we're just going to chill. And then he like starts talking about whatever affected him. And then it's a domino effect. Everybody starts talking about what's affecting them. And it's really, I think it's leadership. Leadership has to be doing the things like you said, like you make an excuse. And if we were just doing that consistently, and that's what we love about Ashley Iverson, because she was really the one. Yeah, that's what we love about her, because she was the one that was like, why are we not having this conversation sitting around the firehouse table? And let's make it a safe space. Yeah, and that's really what it's about. And thank you for doing that for your people, because that's...
And I want to circle back to when we were talking about continue to talk to your wife about how much your family can take. And then the wives need to be honest, because when you're a new wife, I think it's preached to you that you need to be supportive of your husband, who's the super alpha firefighter guy. And when he says he's got to work 15 shifts extra a month, you go, yes, honey, let me rub your feet for you. Right? The wife needs to be more honest and raise her hand and go, that's too much. I need to say, hey, let's cap it at X amount of shifts.
Hi, I might be the problem.
Fire away, ladies, fire away.
Hi.
Peter's like, let's watch this.
I might be the problem because I never, ever said, go ahead and work 15 extra shifts and let me rub your feet.
I wish more women would just be honest and say, this is the cap for our family. And this is, it's a respect both ways issue. But if you get married with that, I'm with a firefighter now, so my life's going to be great and easy, and there's going to be fireworks all the time in our backyard. That's such a hard way to start, and it's just not going to end up that way. So whatever it turns into shouldn't be a surprise.
Enter Dear Chiefs podcast because we keep it real. Like, honestly.
I love it.
Jason, I'll disagree with you a little bit on that one. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're almost like assigning some blame to the spouse for not like saying this is enough, this is too much for me. And I think it probably needs to come from both of you guys. And
whoa, boy. Stop. I'm going to have to put you in corners now.
Hey, I'm going to mute because Chelsea's got my back now, so we're good.
What I'm saying is, because the firefighter's here, there is no like, I'm here doing this great thing for the community, so you have to tell me when too much is too much for you. What I'm saying is, it's on both of them. Like, they should both say, it should be a conversation. It shouldn't be like the firefighter, man or woman, has this like lofty position and they're doing these like sacrificial things for the community, and the spouse has to just suck it up and take it and then just tell me when it's too much. Like, that's all I'm saying. That's kind of nonsense in my mind. Like, they should both be like be able to read the room and go, okay, this is too much. I see that, or the spouse, vice versa.
I think it's hard for a new wife
Mm-mm.
because, I mean, like you guys said, when you signed up for this, you were not getting these crazy mandos, right? So I don't think firefighters know when now they probably know, and that's probably why they're not applying, because they don't want to work bandos. But now that I think about it, but I don't think that you really know what your schedule is going to be like, and you don't realize like, oh, I'm going to work these 10 days. I didn't really know my wife had a choice. So the wife is at home thinking, all right, well, he has to do this for 10 days. I don't really get to say, no, that's too much. Oh my God, I'm losing my mind. You just go with it until you're so pissed off and resentful. And then you're like, wait, why are you mad? And it's like you said, like you have to communicate.
I think we're talking about extra days, not like the bare minimum.
Well, I also think that that's making an assumption, and I don't think that the firefighter should assume that their wife is having a problem or not having a problem. I think that we should be talking to each other.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you? I mean, assumption is
hi. What did I tell you? I'm the problem. It's me.
Assumption is the root of all evil.
I think intrinsically, you shouldn't expect to know what the other person's thinking. Or like, if I think 8 overtimes is good and she thinks 2 is good, we need to have a conversation and figure out, because maybe her thoughts and my thoughts for what are best for the family are totally different. It doesn't mean one of us is wrong. It means you respect each other and figure out where that.
No, what I'm saying is you should be able to see if there's you should be able to identify if there's a problem in your relationship.
But how?
Like, I mean, if somebody's unhappy, if the relationship's not working, if there issues come up, like, you don't think like that's only one person's job? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's not. I'm saying that it's a team effort.
That's exactly what I'm saying too.
Right. 100%.
All right. You two go to your corners.
But I also think that you can't tell necessarily that there's issues at home when you're not at home. And the person who's at home can't tell if there's issues at work because they're not at work with you. So it goes back to, we have to be talking about it all the time and not assuming that because you had a bad call, you're going to have a PTSD response, or that because I had a bad day at home, I need you to not take overtime. Like that's what I'm talking about, where we can't assume.
So I would agree with you. I would agree with you on that. But I guess what I was trying to communicate poorly is that if I'm in a relationship with my wife, I feel like I should be in tune if there's an issue between us.
Are you a mind reader, Peter?
I'm not saying.
Yeah, right. Are you clairvoyant?
I feel like there's some couples therapy versus not here that is happening.
I mean, I know if my wife's mad at me or she's having a problem.
Sure, yeah.
But I mean, how many times in a week is too many times for her to be mad at you? Like that's my question. Like, that's why I said how.
That's impossible to answer for me anyway. Maybe you can. I don't know.
That's what she's saying, I think, is you got to communicate.
All I'm saying is, if you're in a relationship that you have with your spouse, either or should know if there's a problem going on.
We're going to have to agree.
In the relationship, I'm not saying like I'm having a problem at work, she needs to know about it, or she's having a problem with some other aspect of her life at home that I don't see. I'm saying like if there's a problem in our relationship, you should feel like that would, like it's like the balance is going to be off, right?
The vibes are off. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I don't believe in vibes, so
I do.
I again have to agree to disagree. Like I feel like if you're communicating all the time about all the
do you know anybody who do you know who any relationship who communicates all the time about
Audra and I communicate all the time with our firefighters.
Let me just tell you though, I mean, there will be plenty of times when like Damien will walk in and be like, whoa, why is everybody on fire right now? Like everybody's pissed off at everybody in the house. And I mean, yeah, we communicate as much as possible, but there's definitely times like I get what you're saying, Peter, when it's like he walks in and is like, what happened? Why is everybody upset? Or like, oh, I can tell mom's really mad about something. Like stuff like that, where it's just like I haven't had a chance to talk to him about it. Or I mean, sometimes
But we're also really good about taking the walk after they get home and being like, okay, let me download what just happened. Like, so I feel like
but there's also been plenty of times where like
no relationship is perfect doing all the things all the time.
Right. I mean, there's still plenty of times in our relationship when he calls and he's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, nothing. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about it right now. And then he's like, oh,
but I think the point was like getting back to the point that you were trying to make, like, don't assume, right?
No.
Like, don't assume.
I would agree with you. Assuming is bad.
Right.
This has been awesome. This is a good conversation. I'm glad we're having this conversation.
I think that next time it needs to be Peter and my wife with you two.
Oh my God, we would have so much fun
all together. Yeah, right. That's what I'm.
We'll just pin you both in the corners, and
that's going to happen. Oh no, yeah, and we're not going to be here. Peter and I will be.
Oh no, you have to be
far
here.
away.
No, you guys are gonna be sharing the screen together. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like who would win the battle, the firewives or the firefighters?
Oh, I already know the answer.
Oh my gosh.
I think
the battle.
All four of us would agree
The
on
wives.
That. Yep.
Yeah.
So you guys are. I'm gonna flip the script on you for a minute. I want to know. So you guys are a smaller department, right?
Yes. 6 stations.
Oh, you're okay. Well, that's not my.
It's relative. It depends on the context.
Yeah,
right?
no, 6 is big. My husband's is 3, technically. 2 in city, and then 1 they do mutual.
Yeah, but in SoCal, 6 is small.
Yeah. So
yeah,
in your small departments, do the spouses like communicate? Do you guys do stuff at the stations, like bring them together to hang out and meet each other?
It's a struggle. We do have a spouses auxiliary, and then the foundation gets involved, and we're trying to promote more of this for sure. So there is some stuff, but not enough.
And when did you start that? I'm just curious.
I want to know who heads it up first. Like who's responsible?
So
Jason's wife.
Okay,
Jason's wife is one of the ones.
One of our board members is actually leads the women's auxiliary from the foundation board. And then her committee is made up of auxiliary members, and they're tasked usually with having functions or getting together with families, whether that's, a day at the beach or getting together to go do a family day at the park or go to a Dodger game down here, whatever we're going to do as a group is usually what they head up. And then time to time, they'll also have just a wives' day where they'll go get wine or go get a massage or whatever they're going to do to kind of get away too. It's really hard, as you guys know, when 1/3, we'll pretend it's only 1/3 of the department is on duty at a time. So then you have babysitting issues and kid issues and all the stuff you guys run into as well.
So you feel like they're like not showing up for it? Is that?
Oh, we struggle. We struggle to get buy-in.
It's busy,
sure.
Right? Everybody's busy. And when you are just putting more stuff on the calendar, that's tough. It's tough to say, as a family, we have stuff going on all the time and you want me to add to my calendar, even though it's for me and for community, it's tough, especially when we work as much as we do and they feel like they're alone, and that could be time together instead. So, yeah.
So may I make a suggestion and you can take it back to your board and your wives?
Please.
Of course. Yeah.
Do you guys have designated family days at your stations?
No.
May I suggest you start it?
Tell us more. What's that look like? How do you?
So designated family day for us used to be, before the pandemic, was like Saturday and Sunday were designated family day, and families would come and we'd all cook dinner together. The kids would play, and then all the firefighters and the wives could be at the firehouse, or, you're on duty, but you're, together. And it could be once a month. It could be every weekend. It could be once a quarter, whatever. But then at least everybody's together, just a suggestion.
I like that.
I like it. We do that
great.
For holidays for sure, right? We have families over. If we did that more, the issue is that, in my opinion, we are so busy that we either wouldn't be there, and it could be seen as a downer because we're gone the whole time that our family drove out.
But that's okay.
At the station.
That's okay.
I see that. I see that. And then the other issue is, when do we find a day that's not full? So it would have to be probably, because we have one day a week that we don't have stuff scheduled, right? So it would have to be that one day. And yeah, I mean,
well, you could do it station to
I don't
station
mean to try
too,
to say no,
right?
but I do think, yes, definitely.
Do you mean
it can be station to
you
station?
have stuff scheduled every day? So are you
planned.
doing like pub ed and training every single day?
Our schedule is, well, not mine anymore, but they fill the schedule up between training and pub eds. And
That's,
stuff
I'm
like
sorry.
Very full.
Wife opinion, that's ridiculous. I'm
So I'd like you to write
the
That.
chief.
Yes, write a dear chief's letter.
Dear chief, that is ridiculous.
Dear Chiefs, the wives are pissed.
I think that it's honestly, it is so important for departments to have downtime.
Mm-hmm.
You should not be, after running calls all day long, training, pub ed, all this stuff, you should have downtime every day. Or one day, 2 days when you're not doing anything. Because that right there, that's going to lead to more mental health problems, more exhaustion, more just
100%.
That's too much. And especially with the call volumes, because we all know they've increased over the last 3 years. It's not necessary. I mean, I am a huge proponent of training. I am not saying don't train. No. 100% you need to do training. And yes, pub ed, absolutely. Yeah. But there's no reason to pack a schedule like that. Oh my gosh, come on.
You're singing to the choir.
Do you guys have designated like downtime though, like every day?
What the?
Whoa. Like, what do you mean? Well, hold on. Let's make sure we're talking about the same thing.
So is there soft time?
After 5 o'clock.
After 5 o'clock.
After 5 o'clock, it's your time just to do whatever minus the calls.
Right, but
so after, is that what you're talking about, or are you talking about something else?
So from 8 to 5, you're on, right? In the traditional sense, and then you have your
then after 5,
you have your 1 hour of PT in there somewhere too.
Yeah, in the morning. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably the same as what you're talking about. And the hour of PT is maybe half the time we get to do that because there's other stuff going on. And then after 5 o'clock, they don't have anything
planned
for the most part.
But you're still running
for the
calls.
most part. They don't have
anything so scheduled. That's what I mean. Like have dinner 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, whatever works for the firehouse. Have it. No,
I think you're onto something there. I'll have to give it some thought, but I really like that designated family days. We do have some of that. The other problem is that as guys get older and their families aren't there anymore, I feel like nobody thinks of the guys who still do have families and want to come to the station. So you have a captain who doesn't matter to him anymore. And then you have the firefighter who's 33 and has 2 little kids. Like, you have to think of those guys.
That part is really hard.
Designated family days come into play.
Mando family days.
Mando family days. Well, I mean, everything else is mandoed, so why not?
Well, so I see problems here in the guys from the previous generation who, like you said, Jason, don't have kids. They're going to like resist.
Here's the thing, and I will tell you, from firsthand experience,
they can't.
No, firsthand experience. There have been times when, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but there have been times when we have gone to family days, quote unquote, and some firefighters choose not to participate and just stay in the rooms. We don't care.
Yeah.
If that's how you want to do it, that's totally fine. That. Your family doesn't have to come. You don't have to participate, but don't ruin it for everybody else.
Well,
Chelsea, you had something, and then I want to bring up another subject.
Well, and like you don't have to participate, but also like sometimes if it is a designated family day and they see other families coming, they actually get really like excited for the next one, which is really interesting. So yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
That's like pub eds too, where guys poo-poo them and then they get there and they're with the little kids and it ends up being a fun time and they were all glad they did it.
Yeah. So I want to change topics a little bit. So our foundation, the Ventura Fire Foundation, is here to support the firefighters and their families. And our assessment is that we need to dedicate more time to the families, spouses, kids, all of those players in this. It's difficult to go, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and that's going to make a big difference. And that's just how we're going to do it. It's really hard to do that. So I'm looking for your opinion on what are things that an organization, not the fire department, but our nonprofit, could do to support the families, like tactical things, not like concepts and, ambiguous things, but like what if somebody said, hey, I'm going to do this? What would that be? What would be helpful from your perspective?
Well, Audra and I did it. We started a podcast. I don't know what else.
Okay. Fair enough. I think it's absolutely helpful, and we dedicate a lot of shows to it as well.
I don't know. I think that designated family day would be really great.
I personally think it's a great idea.
What do you guys do right now?
So, like, we've had Minda O's come and do a seminar for the spouses. We've done that. We've had Ashley Iverson come up, and was it Iverson?
Yeah.
Did I
Yes.
say her last name? Right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. She's come up once or twice, I can't remember, and done her thing up here. We have another one coming up for couples. So we've done those types of things, but those are helpful, and I don't discount them. I think they're great. We get great feedback from them. But I'm looking for something that we could make your life at home a little bit better by doing this. And we've polled wives and talked, and a lot of it, the conversation starts to revolve around like time for self-care. So give me a break, babysitting options, like that comes up fairly frequently, but that's complex too, because we're talking about giving your kids to someone else you may or may not know. There's things like the spouse is never home, so come fix things. That's come up as well. So just curious from your perspective, because you guys have a unique perspective because you've had this conversation on your podcast with professionals over and over and over again. And I think you would have maybe a easier time answering the question or not. I don't know, but yeah.
You're like,
I think the prioritizing self-care kind of, I get like the daycare issues. So what if you had a day when you guys, I don't know if you can do this legally or what it would look like with liability insurance, but what if you sponsored a day for kids and moms and dads could come and the kids could have an activity to do and they could have time to themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Like drop the kids off for this amount of time and you guys bounce.
Or they're still on site and there's an organized activity of some kind for the adults and the children separately.
yeah, bring in a clown.
So
Like
providing
yoga with
yeah,
Ashley Iverson. Yeah. So 2 activities simultaneously happening. So parents are still on site.
Those are like event type things. And some of the feedback we get is, I'm not going to add another thing to our calendar. It's already jam packed with sports and kids and this and that. I think in my mind, like something in the house that would be helpful, but I don't know what it is.
I love my RoboVac. Maybe you guys can just buy everybody a RoboVacuum.
That provides you more time, right?
Yeah.
Providing a housekeeper is one of the things we've talked about.
I have a housekeeper. I fully support that. Okay.
I don't know about providing a housekeeper
for everybody.
Oh my God, Rosie.
Yeah. I'll tell you what.
I love Rosie.
We love Rosie, but I also love my little vacuum over here. I call him Alfred.
Nice.
In my house, his name's Henry. So
that's such a hard question because it's going to be so dependent on what
different for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe you give them a spending limit and they go spend it on whatever they want that they think would be helpful for them.
I like that.
Yeah, but they have to spend it on themselves.
Yeah,
and
they can't buy uniforms.
Add it to the college tuition fund.
That could be helpful for somebody too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Audra and I both have kids that are in college. So helping me with my college bills might be good.
Every scholarship known to man on my computer right now. I'm like,
yeah. I mean, I think that if you want something tangible, give them a catalog of things they can choose from.
Give them their firefighter back for a day. God.
We're going to give you your firefighter back with no overtime for 2 months. That would be wildly famous.
Oh my God.
Virtually impossible for our foundation to do, but I agree with you. It would be good.
We hear it and say it over and over. Work less. Figure out a way to work less.
All right, we can move on. I don't want to stagnate on that. I didn't know if you had anything top of mind that was going to be, revolutionary for our conversation, but
no.
God, I wish.
If it was easy, we would have already done it. It's a tough thing to ask, and it's so personal, and everyone's different.
But if you prioritize and put something in the budget that your spouse really needs every month, I think it's a huge help because they have something to look forward to.
Yeah, housekeeping is. I mean, but then I'm like anti-housekeeper, so
some people are.
That's why I have a RoboVac. I don't want I don't want people I don't know in my house.
Oh my God, I trust my housekeeper with my life now. And she's, I love her to death because she does stuff that I don't have time to do. And frankly, my husband does not want to do it when he comes home from cleaning toilets all the time at the station. So Although he doesn't clean toilets much anymore because he's,
Old.
yeah, he's a captain now. He just stands over the person cleaning the toilet, make sure he's doing it right. Just kidding, honey.
We love you, Damien.
No, he still picks up the vacuum. He doesn't like to sit still, though.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, this has been a great conversation. Anything material to the conversation that you guys want to talk about that we haven't had a chance to?
Don't work so much. I think if there's like one thing I would say is it sounds like you guys already have a pretty good peer support, and don't force the firefighters to go to debriefings, but do like Jason. It starts at the top, and if the leadership does not support it, nobody else is going to support it. So take care of your
I'm going to piggyback off of that and say, if there is an incident, please invite the families to a debriefing.
I like that. Yeah, that's something that we don't do, and we can definitely improve on.
We were on some a guest podcast a couple weeks ago, and they sent us a one-page sheet that they actually send home to the spouses after a serious call that tells them what to expect, like what to look for, what signs you firefighters are exhibiting at home, so that the spouse kind of knows what is going on, like in your mind, what you could be thinking, what could be happening, like signs of trauma, those kinds of things. I thought that was fascinating. I've never seen anything like that.
But I think that assumes that the family has been invited to the debriefing.
No, and they had.
I have never seen one of those come. I have never seen one of those come home.
And in fact,
my husband's been to many.
Yeah, in fact, I think
with that company,
I asked if they had ever invited the family, and I think he said no. It's really good information, nonetheless. So,
it's great information, but I'm like, how does it get home? How do we guarantee it gets home to? Yeah. And how does it get home to the family?
We need to have them first. I think we're pretty weak on the debriefing thing. I think
I'm not saying that you should have them for every call.
The big ones.
A major incident. Yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying. I just don't think that that's a strength that our department
I don't think it's
has.
a strength that any department has, honestly. I think it's something that's going to be, like you said, Peter, a little like it'll be trending toward that way. But I mean, a lot of departments still don't even have a peer support team. So I think, if we could tell you one thing, it would be get a peer support team.
Or get somebody that knows how to build one.
Yeah.
That's why you need to have James Boomhauer on the podcast.
Get the Cortico app.
What's his background? What does he talk about?
So he actually talks about peer support. He can help you build a peer support team. He has been the peer support coordinator for Boston Med for years.
Just got his PhD, freaking awesome. Right?
He just got his PhD.
Master's.
Therapist. Master's.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
He's brilliant.
Yeah. And he's culturally competent.
Yeah.
He works as a flight medic, right? Yeah. Flight medic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I feel like we're pretty good on the peer support thing. We have a pretty robust team, but yeah, I'd love to talk to him. Love to have him on. Where can our listeners find you guys? We have the Dear Chiefs podcast. I would love for them to start listening. What's the best way if they want to get involved or reach out? How do you suggest someone does that?
Instagram.
Yeah, we have Instagram. You can find us at Dear Chiefs. We also have a website. It's just dearchiefs.com. And we're on TikTok, but I don't know our handle.
I don't know it either. Wait, hold on. I think it's Dear Chiefs.
I think it's Dear Chiefs.
I mean,
podcast,
honestly, the TikTok is basically, it's Dear Chiefs podcast. Yeah. At Dear Chiefs podcast. It's it's all the same stuff that you see on Instagram, just to get a wider audience. But
which, depending on how old you are, is which platform you use.
I really hate
we're also
TikTok.
on Facebook for anybody that's 90. That's all on Facebook.
You can always email us too. Okay, hello@dearchiefs.com.
Gotcha, Jason. Anything you want to touch on before we wrap this up?
No, when we're done with the show, I'm definitely going to ask you guys to email us that peer support sheet for the spouses afterwards. I think that I'm going to send that to our peer support group, and then maybe they can do something with that as far as implementing it at home. And that way, at least the home family members still feel included. And I think it's also a great way for the department or the peer support team to know if somebody acts like everything's okay at work and they're not doing okay at home. It's just another facet, a way that they could intervene when that's necessary. So I appreciate you guys coming on a ton. It's really good to get that other perspective here. I have a feeling we'll be talking to you guys again and, collaborating. And if we can get Peter and my wife in a room with you guys, I think you would all be very close to on the same page. And I think that would be a good thing too. So thank you guys for being here. I really do appreciate your time.
Yeah. I want to say I appreciate the banter and that we didn't all just agree on everything, because that would have been really boring. So
right.
We're never boring.
Appreciate your guys' perspective. Yeah. All right. Thanks for coming on the show. Go listen to their podcast. And thanks for listening to this episode.
Thanks for having us.
All right, Jason, that was a great episode. A very colorful conversation we had with Audra and Chelsi.
Yeah, that was definitely a fun one. We had some good banter with them, and it kind of felt like having discussions with some of the wives that I've seen around when we have events with the fire department. It was fun. It turned into more of a conversation just with some of those experienced firefighter wives, and I talked about that in the episode too. To when you're going to marry a firefighter, you should really get with an experienced wife who's gone through a lot of that too. One of the things I took away was I know I kind of balked at it a little bit on the episode, but I'm definitely going to try to plan out some family days at the stations. And I think the key that she talked about was when she said, plan them out beforehand and have those dates on the calendar and, get that time going.
Yeah, I thought that was a great idea for sure. We didn't always agree on the issues, which was good. We definitely discussed them in detail. But I think I love what they're doing. The fact that they're trying to create this community of firewives and educate them on what they're getting into and how they can cope with the issues. And I like what they're doing.
Yeah, and the fact that they can raise their hand and say, we're the Hot Mess Express. I don't know if they coined that term, but man, I like it. That's perfect.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you like this episode, guys, please share it. We are trying to get the word out for the work that the foundation's doing and what we're doing with the podcast. Give us a review, send it to friends, other firefighters, spouses, kids, all of the above. So that would be helpful for us.
Yeah. Follow, like, and share. Dear Chief, much has happened. That was a great line. Have a good week, Pete.
You too.